can start from the point that Japan is not an Arctic state, and it has never claimed to be one. When it comes to the north, this is slightly different. In my past, I have studied Hokkaido and Hokkaido-related questions, and Hokkaido has a long history with North, the concept of North. Today, Hokkaido clearly sees itself as a part of the North. It has been actively promoting policies aiming to enhance collaboration between Hokkaido and the other northern regions. Hokkaido used to be a really active player in the Northern Forum. That also has observer status in the Arctic Council. But yeah, since the late 1960s, early 70s, Hokkaido has had policies that are based on this kind of conception that while Hokkaido was, some people say, colonized by the Japanese people, it was kind of the development or modernization of Hokkaido was based on the model that we have in southern part of Japan, in the main island and so. But then in 1960s, early 1970s, different actors in Hokkaido, they paid attention to the fact that in environmental wise, the circumstances, conditions we have here in Hokkaido, they have much greater resemblance with those of Far East, Russia, or northern part of United States, Alaska, Canada, also the Nordic countries. So there was this idea that Hokkaido should learn from other northern regions, and that eventually led to international collaboration that in the early 1990s took form in the Northern Forum. And for the next 2 decades or so, Hokkaido used to be a key player there, together with Alaska and many other regions. Well, today Northern Forum has its own problems, and Hokkaido is no longer a member in this organization, but there is a organization called HIEC, focusing on Hokkaido International Exchange and Collaboration and Cooperation Center. So they are a business partner in this in Northern Forum. So North is there. It has been there a long time. But when it comes to the Arctic is a newer concept. It became here in Japan. Well, usually the history of connections between Japan and the Arctic, people start with the fact that Japan was one of the signatory bodies in Svalbard Treaty, and then you start talking about post-war years, how the polar research started in Japan, obviously focusing mainly on the Arctic. Then we come to the 1990s, when international collaboration in the Arctic context start taking new forms, usually starting the story from the Gorbachev's Murmansk speech and so on. Japan also became a member of IASC, and what is peculiar in the Japan's case is not necessarily the fact that they were also interested in natural sciences and established the research station in Svalbard, but they were also Japan was interested in Northern Sea route in a really early stage in 1990s. There was Inthrop together with a big project, multi-year project with Norway and Russia, followed by Jansrop. That was a Japanese project, kind of studying the feasibility of the Northern Sea route as an international shipping lane. But then interest in the Arctic, according to some, was kind of also already maybe fading away or losing its momentum. But then when Japan, China joined the Arctic Council, expressed their interest in applying for this position. Japan also at the end of the first decade of this millennium kind of re-established its interest in the Arctic affairs. Based on then, if you think this from the Hokkaido side, or Hokkaido is kind of jumping into this new interest in the Arctic, according to my understanding, was easy because they had this long history of collaborating with other northern regions, some of which are Arctic and some of which are non-Arctic, but still very much at the circumpolar north. In the case of Japan as a state, there were institutional changes within the country. We have, the position for the Arctic ambassador was created. We have the first Arctic policy in 2015, followed then by other policy instruments where this Japan's Arctic policy has been updated as a part of the ocean policy framework. But then here in Hokkaido, the early interest was then in the business side, again on focusing on the Northern Sea route. Many people in Hokkaido saw kind of Hokkaido as a potential hub for the Northern Sea route. Again, there were many other regions, countries hoping to become a hub for the Northern Sea route if the container shipping would one day happen. Those plans have maybe again, at least they have been revisited these ideas that even if Hokkaido would be the place where the existing shipping routes from North America to East Asia would meet the new Arctic route, even if this looks good in the map, there are other reasons why this may not happen, at least not in the near future. That being said, Hokkaido is still seeing many advantages in its geographical position. One of them is related to submarine cables and different trans-Arctic cable projects. Hokkaido is very much seen there as a potential landing. Again, if be it submarine cable, be it shipping, whatever, if you want to connect Northern Europe with East Asia, you come through the Bering Strait, and then Hokkaido is geographically located between the Bering Strait and then the great metropolis in the East Asia. That's a few points concerning the relationship between Arctic North, Japan, and Hokkaido as a starting point for our discussion. If we think about the public awareness here in Japan concerning the Arctic issues, it's not that I would have kind of measured data to support this argument, but only for like following the public media, it seems that the television programs focusing on the Arctic or kind of elaborating the Arctic issues, mainly related to environmental change, melting of sea ice, that kind of issues are possibly more visible in Japanese media. It's kind of how strongly Japan is connected to the Arctic. How far is the Arctic? There are maybe some misconceptions. Some of my it's not actually I have stolen this idea from somebody else, but usually when I talk about Arctic to Japanese audience, I start by showing a map that points out that North Pole is closer to Japan than Hawaii. And quite a few Japanese have been in Hawaii, and they may feel that it's not that far away. But, North Pole is something that is felt that it's far, far away. Again, we have increasing number of academic research pointing the strong connections between Arctic and Japan. The basic idea that what happens in the Arctic does not stay in the Arctic. If we have, it's just because my colleague has been such kind of research, if we have a forest fire in Siberia, it has impacts on the air quality here in Hokkaido, for example. Obviously, when we have these global weather patterns and changes in there, it has impacts on our life. In general, the sustainable development and global warming, they are gaining more and more attention in Japanese media, and also how these things are affecting not only the our globe, but what are the local implications. Again, here in Hokkaido, the fisheries and fishing industry is extremely important. We have similar kind of discussions that many Arctic regions have, that we have different species adapting to the changing temperatures in the seawater. Some of the fish that we used to catch here are moving northwards, and that's a clear kind of the connection between the changing climate to some extent, also the Arctic, and then our everyday life, and also the our business activities taking place here. They are gaining more attention, even if we have to point out that there are many other issues that gain greater visibility in Japanese media, and I guess are more on people's minds. The question of Arctic boom or increasing interest in Arctic among Japanese academia comes pretty close to me, because the fact that I live here, the fact that I work here is tightly connected to the fact that Japanese government has invested in Arctic research during the past 10 years a lot. Our research institute here, our research center in Hokkaido University, it's kind of reflects the call that was made in the first Japan's Arctic policy, saying that Japan has to strengthen its Arctic research. This research institute was established, and then I was hired together with a few other foreign scholars to do research here. But even before that, even before our research center at Hokkaido University was established, we have had nationwide initiatives. Obviously, we have the Polar Research Institute, we have JAMSTEC in Tokyo that have been interested in the Arctic already longer time. But then in, let's say a decade ago, JCAR association that brings together Japanese Arctic researchers, especially with the natural science, it became more active. Then we had GREEN as a first national Arctic project, but GREEN was mainly natural scientists. It was followed by ARCS, Arctic Challenge for Sustainability. That was a large-scale national Arctic flagship project, where also people with social science and humanities background were involved. And then what we have now is ARCS-2, that is the ongoing Japan's Arctic flagship project, where the structure is slightly different, but where besides involving social sciences, humanities, there was also an attempt to more strongly bring in engineering sciences and that kind of expertise on, let's say, some kind of problem solving, maybe. Besides these national Arctic flagship projects, there has been initiatives like JACNet and others. So the amount of funding that has been put in Arctic research in Japan has has been great during the last decade or so. We are optimistic that this will continue. As one of the forthcoming great initiatives is this new, research icebreaker. I think it's 2027 when we should have that in use in Japan. So there are clear indications that the government has seen Arctic as an important issue. And also when you put resources in a field like Arctic research, that has also helped this research community in Japan to grow bigger. It has also kind of attracted young talents because we have had possibilities to send young researchers to different Arctic countries to participate in international conferences, activities. So it's coming, but we are still in process of institutionalizing the educational tracks through which we can educate experts in the field of Arctic studies and research. Hokkaido University Summer Institute is a platform that supports Hokkaido University teachers who, in collaboration with the foreign partners, are interested in establishing short courses that then involve both the Hokkaido University students and students from different universities, globally. We have utilized, and when I say we, I refer to Hokkaido University Arctic Research Center. We have utilized this framework to offer both kind of introductory course, Arctic natural and social sciences, where we have had our own experts, often with colleagues from University of Alaska Fairbanks coming here and giving lectures. Then we have had also kind of a bit more focused courses. Usually they are short, 3-4 days. Last year we had a course focusing on Arctic in Asia, Asia in the Arctic. This was conducted in collaboration with U-Arctic thematic network with the same name. That was an attempt to explain the interaction between the Arctic and the East Asia. To some extent also explain the Arctic policies of different Arctic nations. Kind of build the bridges so that some kind of mutual understanding could be improved. Again, we managed to invite some students from our own university, some students from abroad. Hopefully we can continue these kind of activities also in the future and kind of increase the number of students participating. Obviously, Arctic and Asia is not the mainstream topic yet. Most likely will never be, but that also explains why the number of participants may be small. But I think we did pretty well this year when it comes to the discussion and incorporating different views, opinions, both from the teacher side and also from the side of students, some of whom were already quite knowledgeable about the issues discussed during the course. Actually, when we start talking about this U-Arctic thematic network, Arctic in Asia, Asia in the Arctic, and the name of the thematic network. First, if I recall it correctly, it was first Asia in the Arctic or Arctic in Asia. But we somehow considered that it's we should not only focus on the way how Arctic is seen in the Asian states, what kind of policies they may have concerning Arctic, and neither should we focus only on Asian actors that are somehow visible in the Arctic, be it Chinese, Japanese investors who are investing in different projects or who are participating in the construction of different type of infrastructure in the Arctic, or who are investing there, so that we could kind of see the both sides, so that we could understand why and how Asian stakeholders are participating in the development, and how they are contributing in the development of the Arctic. And at the same time also kind of trying to understand and explain how these different actors, which may be not that close to the Arctic, or that are clearly outside the Arctic, but whose decisions still has a tremendous impact on the development of the Arctic. How these countries, how these actors see and understand the region. And then again, it's when it comes to Arctic, industrial development, Arctic business, when it comes to tourism in the Arctic, quite often these dependencies between the Arctic and non-Arctic actors is if not obvious, at least they are strong. Something like COVID-19 opened the eyes then in the field of tourism that I have studied only a bit. It clearly opened the eyes for people to understand that what happens when the non-Arctic visitors can no longer come. Again, I think it comes to the bridge building idea, the mutual understanding, and the importance of even if not always agreeing on everything, at least understanding the standpoint of those who are approaching the Arctic outside, and at the same time also those who are living within, and who may sometimes be confused when there are new actors involved in Arctic related issues. If we think again the connection between Hokkaido and the Arctic, there are several locations, places, and institutions through which we can kind of approach this connection. One of the important places where to start might be Upopoi, our new National Ainu Museum. Before that, in the same place, there used to be a much smaller museum run by an Ainu association, and that association had MOU collaboration with Sami Museum Sida, for example, in Sida being in Inari. According to my understanding, Upopoi, as a kind of relatively newly established institution, is trying to re-establish their connections with Sida, for example. There are also other museums in Abasiri. There's a museum dedicated for the northern indigenous people, where we can not see not only Sami people, but many references to the life of indigenous people in North America, in many parts of Russia, Russian far north, far east. So there's this kind of connection between Hokkaido and the Arctic through the northern indigenous people. Similarities in their livelihood that I guess is strongly related to the fact that the environmental conditions are not the same, but have many resemblances. Then if you think the Hokkaido and its northernmost shore, that's the southernmost place in the world where we have sea ice. Well, it's a drifting ice, but it's also the fact that in the Sea of Okhotsk we have this drifting sea ice is also the origin of many Arctic researchers in Japan. They have started to study sea ice related phenomena in the Sea of Okhotsk. The experience and phenomena related to sea ice, they are often connecting Hokkaido, its northernmost shore, with other parts around the Sea of Okhotsk and also in other sea areas where we have ice formation taking place. That's also a place where we have tourism that is built around sea ice and actually ice break. Well, in the case of Monbetsu and Abashiri in Hokkaido, we have ice breaking vessels. In for example, in Kemi in Finland, we have an icebreakers, tourism activities built around icebreakers. The same also in the Swedish side of the border. So that kind of connections are there as well. We have conducted some comparative studies concerning these issues. Tourism in general offers several kind of points of comparison. On the one hand, we have Hokkaido that is, especially during the past decade or so, strongly developed its winter tourism, skiing and it's Niseko powder and whatnot globally known. But then global warming is causing worries and questions concerning the future of winter tourism in Hokkaido, and these are quite familiar to many places in the Arctic as well. Also, the great increase in the number of tourists, it has positive but also negative effects on the often small communities that are hosting a great number of foreign visitors, often only during the winter months. And again, I already mentioned the indigenous people living here in the Hokkaido. I have also been involved in research that focuses on responsible and sustainable indigenous tourism, and we have made comparisons between in this case Sami in Finland and then Ainu here in Hokkaido. Then the connection between Arctic and Hokkaido can also be approached by going to the harbors here in Hokkaido, something like the harbor of Tomakomai. Some of the great huge modules that were shipped to Yamal Peninsula, they came through Tomakomai port, or the ship made a port call in Tomakomai on its way to the Arctic. And again, the trans-Arctic cable system is they are envisioning a cable landings in basically also in Tomakomai. So there are these physical sites where you can see the connection and understand why back then he was a foreign minister. Onotaro described Hokkaido as Japan's gateway to the Arctic. I think it was in 2018 in Arctic Circle Assembly in Reykjavik.